Right, hey everyone, I'm Klloo. A new scheduled banned and restricted announcement. So, Berserk and oddly Crown of Seas. Now I say oddly, mainly because, again, class constructed, so Elemental is not in the mix. Blitz, we'll get to that in a second, but overall, it's odd to me that it's not just a insight into the discussion, it's more so it's banned. So there's a few things that we could potentially read into in regards to this choice and the final set of the year. But anyway, we'll start off with reading through it because once again, LSS just fantastic transparency in their choices, decisions, and thought process. So it's always wonderful to see. In a vacuum, Berserk ban looks somewhat absurd. Not to discount a sterling performance from Corey Robinson. Sorry, I butcher names, so if I don't know how to say it, I'm going to avoid it. Who took Berserk Reiner to a top 4 finish. But Berserk sightings have been quite rare in class constructed since the start of heavy hitters. However, Berserk has eaten up a tremendous amount of development time since it first appeared in Dynasty, right? So in that sense, they're sort of saying we were thinking about the beat chest mechanic, making the discard mechanic a bit more consistent. Berserk is the direct counter to that because then we're just straight up enabling it. So going into heavy hitters, we made a decision that we were not going to allow Berserk to shape our approach to development when it came to KO. And while we did validations on the archetype to make sure it didn't just break the game in half, we knew we weren't going to change cards and numbers to make Berserk 100% safe. If things went wrong, we would just ban Berserk, which they are, possibly even preemptively. Ultimately, we came to the same conclusion as the community. Berserk KO appeared to be a trap, and the best way to build a hero was an efficient aggro deck. As we saw claim top 8 spots in the Pro Tour, we're happy to let Berserk KO go forth into the world and see some play where the metagame called for it, or let Berserk function as a potential sideboard option for the difficult matchup. So, what changed? The very next time we sat down to design brute cards, we found ourselves facing the same conundrum, proceeded with the same approach. This go around, we found ourselves facing, well, that already is a curiosity. So are they thinking about making it even more consistent? Because again, beat chest is already a mechanic. Yes, if you flood the game with a lot more beat chest cards, then obviously it enables Berserk further. This go around, we found ourselves faced with a Berserk deck that was both far stronger than previous iterations and quite miserable to play against. Also, more brute cards in the work. Although, I would read this, to be honest, as maybe the class constructed deck. Because again, the easiest way for them not to devalue cards but still make a competitive deck would be build a deck from scratch and have new cards that are only in that product, which then also makes it desirable past both class constructed into Living Legend to some extent, and of course Blitz. So yeah, I wouldn't read into this as set design for Brute because we just got heavy hitters, so I doubt they're going to touch on it just yet unless it's some Levia stuff. So I do think they're referring to their design of the first KO deck. At some points, we have to just admit certain cards are mistakes. Yes, fully well aware there are a ton of open-ended cards in a lot of the first few sets that, again, will face this same conundrum because it seemed cool at the time, but the implications to designing future items for X class, X category is going to be the conundrum. So, Berserk falls into that category. If it ever achieves what we set out to do, it reduces Flesh and Blood to a game of reveal the top deck of my card until we see if my opponent is dead. Then there is simply no choice to create further design constraints on the Brute class to enable Berserk to exist. Well, you go outside of Intimidate, right? You have a whole different design similar to Betsy, Victor, Bravo. So there is ways, but I guess they want that as the core identity. So where was I up to? We can just move on. Preemptive banning allows us to look out for players and prevent them from buying into a deck that has a high eventual likelihood of getting banned. Yep. Again, it's a solid choice, and again, an insight into their inner workings. They're admitting mistakes in card design, which is, again, fantastic, rather than trying to put a band-aid, work around it, all that. Awesome amount of transparency. So, what about Crown of Seeds? Without going into the details with the same specificity, I can't say it. S&Ps, no good for me. Much of the above can be applied to Crown of Seeds, so again, infer, well, they're designing something. They've tested it. Doesn't quite work. Many of us lived through the old him meta. We were spared from controlled Briar meta, perhaps only by Ascension to Living Legend. I feel it's more the elemental choices of Briar, but anyway, we don't need to go down this road again, and it's not beneficial to be forced to shape future Earth heroes around the existence of Crown of Seeds. So again, it's the same conundrum. They have one card that enables so much. So they either get rid of the card or they design around the card. And obviously designing around the card has a much larger impact than just getting rid of the card. Despite the fact that no classic constructed legal heroes can currently run Crown of Seeds, we're taking the opportunity to move it to the banned list, cementing its current and future home as the Living Legend format. So I love the transparency. I love the thought process. But again, for me, I've said this before, I don't like these overarching bans. I don't think it's healthy for what they were trying to achieve in the game. Again, you're hitting a legendary from a set that has no valid life in the main format of the game, right? Tails is currently in limbo. Even if we get an elemental set, if it's like Dust Till Dawn, we know now that there will be some overlap, but it won't be a complete extension. So we'll have new heroes, again, most likely new mechanics, where the crossover isn't truly there. So while some cards do perk up, not every card does. So by blanket banning Crown of Seeds just in general, what it does is it pulls that card out of every single box of Tails and makes it worthless. And again, it's a high value card. We don't value them by the actual rarity. We don't value them by their design, right? Cold foil, rainfall, doesn't matter. All we care about is playability. That is the number one aspect of any card value currently in Flesh and Blood, right? It's why Lion Strike, it's why Command and Conquer, Art of War, all of them are perked up so much, because again, those are some of the best staple cards in the game. So what I would rather see them do is, again, ban by hero, right? Ban Berserk in both Rhina and KO. Leave it open to a hero that doesn't focus predominantly on, I know you still have, again, the interactions of cards with it, but think about it. The big thing with Rhina is every time you intimidate, right, your opponent can't defend. So again, that's part of the win con. With KO, it's much easier to hit that goal. So both of them are still built around this discard mentality. As for Crown of Seeds, while they don't want to design around it, they're also excluding any possibility of it. And if you go through the entire ban list, it's the same sort of conundrum. But also begs a few different questions to me, right? Because there are a ton of cards that I personally would look at as this is a design around, right? The biggest one that comes to mind is like Stormstriders. That is now a wizard mechanic that you have to design around in any set that involves wizard, right? A turn of being able to cast everything instant. What does that implicate, right? How can that not be an item to design around? And if you start doing that, what you end up seeing is a lot of equipment has that similar mentality, where it is a big enabler because that is what it was designed to do. The equipment cards are just as flavorful as your own hero ability. So again, preemptive, we don't know what they're working on, so I can't go overboard and say it's completely wrong, but it does feel like they could do these types of bans in more moderation, right? Looking at the Living Legend and all the stuff that targeted Stravo, but also had implications for like Olden, right? There's lots of cards too that, again, if you look through the ban list, well, does it need to be banned in every single character of that class, every single hero of that class, or could it be done specifically and still find some use, some fun elsewhere and still be a nice little toolkit device? So in Blitz, Berserk is banned for the exact same reason, right? Even more prevalent because, again, it's more of an aggro format. So a card like Berserk that can do this in Classic Constructed is just as bad, right? If they're thinking it might happen in Classic Constructed, chances are it is happening in Blitz. Now the Crown, they're holding off because, again, right now you can try it in Brian. You can see if it does pan out. Most likely doesn't, because that's not the style that Briar wants, right? Briar isn't fatigue heavy, right? If we go to Crown of Seeds for anyone, did I call it Thorns? I might have. But yeah, so Crown of Seeds, once per turn, instance, pay 1, put a face down card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck, draw a card, and prevent the next one damage will be dealt to you. So you get to cycle your arsenal card, you get to draw one back, so it's just taking it from your arsenal to your hand, which does, again, enable more block if you're stuck in, with whatever card you put in your arsenal, and then it also gives that damage prevention. So you get a new card to block with if you were maybe loading up an attack or saving something else. Flexibility is the big thing. And then it also gives the damage prevention. Now, do I personally think this is too extreme? No. The big thing for me that made it problematic in Oldhim is you took the Earth archetype, you took the Guardian archetype, and you took the Ice archetype, and you stuck them all together. And that, to me, was the biggest issue. The biggest issue for Elemental is the fuse mechanic. And when I say fuse, I mean the fusion of two different elements on a character. While that's fun and fantastic, it is just normal specializations on steroids, right? You have your normal class cards, you then get two different archetypes to pull from that are generally counter to what your class is doing, right? Giving Oldhim Ice, giving him Earth, giving him Guardian, right? You can then cherry pick all the fatigue cards from that and use that. So that's my take on Crown of Seeds. But yeah, again, right, thinking about other cards that have a design implication. Again, Storm Striders, right? So Storm Striders, again, instant, destroy it. You may play your next wizard non-attack action cards this turn. So any card that is a this turn effect will have design implications, because what you have to then think about is, what spells am I giving wizard? Is it always just going to be KO? It could go the opposite way. Is there some insane draw mechanic, insane defensive mechanic where Storm Striders just becomes a free turn, if you will? Now, will it get to the extent of what they're saying with like Berserk, where again, it just becomes a roulette until you win? Or will it be just a powerful mechanic that they do have to build around? So there is that fine line. But again, to me, Crown of Seeds fits on this side of that conundrum rather than on the Bloodsheath. God, what is it called? Oh, that's a V, not a B, right? Where that is broken because of the cards they ended up developing. So a lot of the time we're trading one card for 3, 4 interesting effects. And is it worth it? Is it interesting? Yeah, it is. And I do think they make the best decisions at the time. But I would like more flexibility, I should say. Yeah, so Bloodsheath Skelter, destroy it. The next attack action card and non-action card. Oh, God. Next attack action card and non-attack action card you play this turn gains this cost 1 less to play for each rune chance. So just a blanket cost reduction, right? That you can save up and use for something big, especially with some of the very high cost cards that they've added that they want this mechanic for, but they don't want it to be an instant gratification, right? Something, again, where you have your equipment piece and just in one turn, you can just take full advantage of it, right? But there are lots of cards that are like that. So are they all at risk of being banned? Are they all risk of just becoming heavily devalued? Because you will find that a lot of them are high rarity, right? At the time, yes, they're expensive because of their very effects. But again, in legacy sets that are, how to phrase it? Well, I guess legacy sums up right? Do we need them reduced in this manner right now? But it does prep for the future, right? So again, what can we read into this? Well, with Crown of Seeds, that means that they're thinking about it, they're building it. So Elemental for the last set. Could be. Now, Wizard, again, makes the most sense, because if you look at the card pools, Wizard is far behind everyone else. So I think we've discussed it before, right? And someone gave the interesting idea of just a Elemental Wizard set where you get, like an Earth, a Fire, well, maybe Draconic, Fire. Depends how they rephrase it, right? If Fire exists. But you have Earth, Lightning, and another Ice, and they're wizards, which I think is cool. Doesn't quite handle Tails, right? You still have all the Elemental Guardian cards, you still have all the Elemental Ranger cards, you still have all the Elemental Runeblade cards in Limbo. So I do think that they're potentially under the issue of we have to remake these heroes so that the cards, again, have use and the set's not just completely dead in the water. But we'll see. Altogether, right, again, love the transparency, but I would continue to advocate for hero-specific bans, right? Just because, well, again, a case-by-case basis. So Berserk, if that is all they're ever going to do with Brute, sure, Berserk makes sense. But in the case of like banning cards specifically for Strava versus banning for Strava, Oldhim, or any other Guardian that hits out, right? I mean, yeah, actually, we have the list up here. What comes to mind off the top of our head? So, Stubby Hammerers, right? Would it be broken in any class that wasn't aggro? Drone of Brutality, right? Blanket effect, so it makes sense. Plunder Run. I didn't know Plunder Run was banned. That's actually interesting. I guess because you've got more time to make sense of it. Same with Belittle. Yeah. What else do we have? But you get what I'm trying to say, right? Would you rather class-specific bans so that there's still flexibility cards and you can still find cool combos, or just, again, get rid of them? Because for the most part, bans in Flesh and Blood are long-term. There's a chance they come off, but generally speaking, they're owned up mistakes by LSS, right? When they designed it, it was a fun, interesting idea, but now its implications are bad. And they'll work for Living Legends, but at the same time, you still end up with some issues. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed. See ya.